Hey, it's time for the Dread Augment. So, with our current Nightwave we have, Volume 7, we have a couple of unique augments for Stalker weapons. The one we're looking at today is Unseen Dread, which is all the way up at Tier 25, so it's going to take a little while to get there. But I think it's actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be when I was just looking at it at first. So, the augment itself gives you invisibility if you hit 3 or more enemies with one shot. And obviously, bows have a very strong built-in punch through, so it's not hard to do, especially when you're on steel path enemy density. You're going to be hitting 3 enemies without even trying. And then you get an additional 175% crit damage, not crit chance, crit damage while invisible. Now, I can't tell for sure. I'm not sitting here trying to crunch the numbers, but it seems like this might be adding on crit damage after everything else is already calculated, because it seems ridiculously strong when this is actually all powered up. Otherwise, everything else is pretty straightforward on here. You might not want Vial Acceleration. That one's just kind of to taste, but otherwise, everything else is pretty normal with Crit Delay, Vital Sense. Got Malignant Force and Rhyme Rounds in here to make viral damage, Galvanized Chamber, and Galvanized Aptitude, of course. Not too worried about adding on any additional elements because the Incarnate form on the Dread has heat damage already. It's not a ton, but it's still there. So we're getting Slash and Heat along with getting Viral to stack up the additional damage against them when you get Viral status effects, which isn't too hard because even with 2 dual stats plus Aptitude, we got 90% status chance for our Incarnate form. You could definitely, on the Arcane, if you want to use Deadhead, certainly an option. You can go Merciless as the easy option. I mean, it's just kind of whatever you feel like doing. Of course, Deadhead's going to give you more damage if you're aiming for the headshots, which you usually want to be doing for bows. So either way, do what you want to do there. As far as the evolutions go, you get a kind of an interesting one for the second evolution with Stalker's Resentment, where you can get additional damage and fire rate, but you have to have all 3 Stalker weapons equipped. And I'm sure most of us aren't going to ever be doing that, so just go with Hitman's Opportunity there. Third evolution, the only one that's really at all useful is the projectile speed, because otherwise, negative zoom, who cares? It doesn't zoom in that much anyways. It's not a sniper rifle. And extra ammo, come on, you're never going to run out of ammo on a bow. That's not physically possible. And now, since we're focusing on crit damage so much with the Unseen Dread augment, it just makes sense to go with Zeroed In to increase your base crit multiplier. The only other one that gives you any more crit stats is Survivor's Edge, but that's an extra 10% crit chance, which is cool, but with a base 50% crit chance already, that's massive, so I don't really see that being necessary. Plus, focusing much more on crit damage is going to be way better than trying to focus on just giving yourself a better chance to get orange crits. And if you really wanted to, if you want to enhance your crits even more than that, you can always I should have done this earlier anyways. I'm being lazy about it. That's my fault. That's what I get for being lazy. We're already polarized for vigilante supplies. You can slap that in there since we don't need stabilizer or anything like that, and give yourself an additional chance to get enhanced critical hits. I have some of those mods already on my Warframe, so I will change to a different one. We'll just demonstrate it in a normal way without the extra enhancements. This would be just using the Dread on its own. You only get a 5% chance for enhanced critical hits, but that's all right. So, obviously, normally this is just going to be doing Dread things if you're not invisible, so you want to get headshots, charge up Incarnate form. You're still firing normal, like pretty, you're not getting like blast radius or anything with the projectiles. They're basically big blades. But once you hit 3 enemies, you get that additional crit damage, and well, you just start blasting right through them. You see, it's very easy to just stay invisible with this thing when you have lots of enemies to shoot at, which is pretty awesome. Now, the other thing you might have thought of, since it said while invisible, you gain the additional crit damage. Can you do that with a Warframe? Well, yes, you can. The Unseen Dread buff comes up as a buff on your bar. So when you're invisible with anything else, you get that 175% additional damage. You'll see it pop up again right there. Unseen Dread active while we're using Smokescreen. And this thing just tears right through enemies. That extra crit damage, you can really feel it. There's just a normal shot without Incarnate Form, 700,000 damage. Nothing insane. I mean, considering the kind of damage that you can do with some weapons, I know it's not like mind-blowing by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still pretty damn good, especially with the fact that you can make yourself invisible without having to have an invisibility Warframe. I mean, it's very easy to keep that invisibility active, as you saw, just shooting through these groups of enemies with this huge Incarnate Form projectile. I really haven't used the Dread Incarnate before this augment all that much. It didn't quite feel like anything that I was super interested in. But I think this augment is changing that because the damage output that it's getting now is just ridiculous. Might as well just switch over to Loki again for fun. Since I have additional Vigilante mods on him, we're going to have a much higher chance of enhancing critical hits. So, just a way of showing off how you can buff the weapon even more without having to use using direct damage buffs like you would normally do for a lot of things. And of course, you got to get a few hits in first to start stacking up your effects, get Galvanized Aptitude going, get your Arcane all powered up, and then once you do, well, you just sitting pretty, tearing enemies apart, no problem. This thing is really, really damn good. Obviously, I have no idea how this is going to perform in the case of the normal Dread, but extra crit damage is good on literally anything that can do crits, because that's the whole point of why you want crits. You want to get the massively enhanced critical hit damage, so why not just do that? And hey, so as long as we're talking about showing off this weapon with additional buffs, why don't we just mess around a little bit more? We'll grab Rhino, give a huge roar buff to this thing, and see what that does. We don't have to worry about an invisibility Warframe, since we can just hit multiple enemies with our shots and go invisible. Get the Unseen Dread buff. There's a nice 1.2 million without even being invisible, or without the Incarnate Form charged up. Got roar going, yeah, look at that. Amazing. 1.1 million. Safe to say, if you can get a weapon to do damage in the 6 digits without having to use any sort of buffs on your Warframe, then you're going to be able to make it do ridiculous damage if you can buff it up even further. So why don't we grab something like the Epitaph, and we'll do status priming as well. Just to give a good idea of how much you can really push something like this to insane amounts. Probably going to get some kills with this thing on accident. Nah, just a couple, that's okay. Easy. Easy. 2.2 million, nice. 1.3, fantastic. Yeah, safe to say this Dread Augment is pretty damn good. I guess it was silly of me to underestimate the power of additional crit damage. I guess I was worried that the prerequisite of having to be invisible was going to make it maybe not as good if you had to power it up first, but of course it's the Dread. It's pretty good to begin with. Get the Incarnate on here, get the Augment on here. This thing is really going to tear some shit up for you. So it's quite the grind to get up to tier 25 on a Nightwave, but if you like Dread, if you like your bows, this is definitely a must-have.